Scott, good, get started. See a lot of familiar faces out there. All right, so welcome to integrating structural engineering with architectural. We've got myself, David Zachary, owner of Zachary Engineering. Nick Sonder, sure you all heard of, and then Jesse Brown, our senior project engineer. And today we're going to go through how Nick prepares his structural model or architectural models before he sends them to us for integrating the structural portion and how we coordinate together. We've got a lot to go through. We're going to go through the architecture process, or Nick will. Jesse will go through how we set up our scripts, our layout templates, show you how to build the structural model, and then there'll be some coordination with Nick and how we go back and forth. And we can do this from anywhere in the world. So with that, I will give it to Nick to go through his process, architectural recovery for setting out to the issue for civil work structure.
So a little background on this project. This is a project inside the town of Truckee, which brought along its own set of issues because it's on a pretty steep slope. As you can see, it's about between 10 and 15%. The first thing the client asked me when grabbing the initial information, we're on site and I'm looking at their steep slope, and the wife said, I want a driveway that is as flat as we possibly can have. And I immediately let them know the impacts of that on an upsloping lot, meaning that the garage is going to be fully retained to the site. So I told that that we're looking at pretty high premiums on the construction cost in order to make that happen. On this home, as an example, I think we had 1,300 cubic yards of export on the property. And I said, those all, along with the added concrete, some of the walls in the back of the garage get up to, I think, as much as 12 to 13 feet in height. Knowing this and, working with Zachary a lot, it helps me to approach the project to try and minimize the impact of that excavation as much as possible. So as the home kind of progresses into the hillside, I did a lot of stepping and elevation change within the crawl space and foundation area so that we didn't have a continuous 12-foot retaining wall all the way around. So that once we get past the entry, those retaining walls start to ruse to about 8 feet of height. And originally, I was thinking this is all going to help us out with our height because we have a new height restriction in the town of Truckee that makes absolutely no sense. And even with this thing on the middle wall retaining 6 feet in that back corner and doing an 8-foot high plate on the top floor and a 1-inch ball vandrack only gain about 12 to 18 inches below the building height restriction. And so the town, this was one of the first projects to be reviewed under their new height restrictions. So I let them know this is the impacts. We're not going to have too many traditional homes anyway. It's going to have to be more low profile roofs. And they seemed pleased with themselves. So it was even more frustrating dealing with that aspect. But what I do, over the years and experience, I know a lot of thicknesses that we typically deal with for our floor cavity, for our roof cavity. I'm pretty good at guesstimating sizes of beams and getting them enough information so that I'm not going to be completely surprised when David and Jesse get on our board. So usually I get them involved not when the model is to this level, which is construction documents, level. I get them involved right at the end of schematic design when it's really just simple openings, simple structure, to get some initial studies to make sure we're on course here for not only beam sizes but shear walls. This home in particular had a little bit of an issue with this rooftop deck and then a large window running across the garage on the rake side, so not the bearing side, but still taking quite a bit of load at that location. So I knew we were gonna have a big beam spanning right across the entire garage. It kind of worked with the client's program. They wanted oversized garage doors. So while these look tall and skinny, those are actually 10-foot wide doors by 11-foot 3-inch tall. And so I think our floor to floor on this is 16 feet from the garage doors to the top or middle main level. And so as I always progressing through these designs, as an architect in our area, we have to be very cognizant of structure because we are also in an earthquake zone, high wind zone, and extremely heavy snow load zone. So the snow load on this property, I think the ground snow load was 249 pounds per square foot, which wasn't that bad. My house is actually only about a mile from this home, and my snow load jumps up to 350 pounds per square foot. But it's a giant amount of weight. You know, we're talking about the weight of parking cars on top of cars on the roof. It's significant. And so we have to be careful how our roof forms work, that they are snow friendly, that they shed away from people, away from where cars are, away from areas that could sustain damage. You'll notice there's a little roof over what is a generator and the heat pumps on the outside. We have to put those under a cover or they will just get completely destroyed in the wintertime. In fact, the generator won't even kick on if you have it just sitting out in the snow, because once its exhaust is filled with snow, it shuts down. So you have to have them under some type of snow cover. So you can imagine that, yeah, I want a generator. It only costs $5,000. Unfortunately, the enclosure we have to do will cost you another $75,000. So then some people decide maybe the battery packs are a better solution than the generator, but these folks are wanting a generator. And then so I do try to combine them with areas like if we have heat pumps or if we have just standard condensers, we need a cover under those anyways. So we just make them a little larger so we can still maintain all the clearance requirements between the heat pumps to the wall, heat pumps to the generator to the wall, and so on. Just it keeps compiling. But that said, as what I do then is I will usually get a preliminary model from Jesse, and we'll start talking about lots of different things. You know, one in particular is we get down to the foundation is making sure we have clear paths within the crawl spaces to run all of our ductwork, making sure we have ceiling areas that have soffits set at correct heights that we can freely run our plumbing and ductwork as well, so that we can actually service all the different areas. This one was a bit of a challenge because they had actually an outdoor patio area that ended up being fully enclosed with the exception of that one opening you're seeing right with the cursor. And so I had to run a deep soffit all the way across that space because above that was 2 bedroom suites. So we got to be able to run all our ductwork, keep it insulated because it's technically exterior space because it's not heated. The owner someday wants to close it in, so we set it up for that. We set the slab down enough that he can come in with a sleeper system, insulate it, and actually I think we call for insulating the slab anyways, but he can add additional insulation and then flooring and make it flush to the main home. So it'll be a simple conversion when he wants to do that. And so Jesse we'll just go back and forth. I'll get a preliminary model. He'll size some beams for me that I'm concerned about. Sometimes I'll ask him for one really, right away specific so I can see what the impact is and go through it with the client and give them some options, like that steel beam going across the middle of the grate room. Originally, we were going to run a beam down low, and I looked at the client and said, you want the ceiling just to run all the way through, and we can do some false beams up pretty tight, or do you want a true wood beam or wood vent steel, I guess because it's such a big span and a huge load, running right through that living room. And so he got to choose and be involved with even that type of detail, which I think clients really appreciate. And we can let them know that, there's a cost impact. I mean, at that stage, we're not giving them hard numbers, but giving them, you're probably adding another $20,000 for that steel beam pushed up into the joist bay, and now the joists are hung instead of sitting. That all has impacts on cost. on how it's installed. And so it's really nice. You can see, in this model, you notice Jesse actually has my model loaded into it. So that's how we do our coordination meetings, is we just look through the model after Jesse has sized some things up. And Jesse's good about saying, hey, some of these are going to project into the space. This is where we are. And then I can address it architecturally. And so we'll go through the model, and most of the time our meetings are short because we just do this. We just go through the whole meeting, check each space, or whole house, check each space. We go up underneath into the crawl space to make sure we have the openings that we need to continuously run any ductwork or plumbing or drainage, things like that. Likewise, these guys also do all of my civil engineering on every project. Which they don't use SketchUp for. They do use Civil 3D. And what is nice about what I do initially is before civil engineering became required, which is what's happened because a lot of architects aren't the best at figuring out drainage. It is something I always dealt with. So I do in my model, actually, before they even see it, I start to physically model the drainage around the hump. So I create the swales to code as best we can in the mountain environment. And I let them know to look at, you can see where I'm cutting, I'll identify this is where we're going to have a major cut in the front. This is where we're going to have a major cut in the back. Originally, we had this as tiered retaining walls. And at the time of Trump, we had this new rule they implemented on retaining walls that you can't go over 6 feet in height unless you get a special use permit, which was a 3-month process. Again, something we've been doing for the last 30 years and had this problem. So they've pulled back on that. So now you'll need a special use permit. It can be done just as a variance, which is nice. But we didn't have that luxury. So we had to pull out all the retaining walls and change all the grading and set our walls at 6 foot max. And then they required both me and Jesse to pin the elevations of those retaining walls all the way down to the area drywall. God love government agencies, just the best. And so if you're lucky enough to have a good structural engineer that utilizes SketchUp, it makes for a much more streamlined process. We just don't run into the headaches in the field unless something has been changed by the contractor. We just don't see giant change orders anymore, or any issues with headers on stairs, or having enough shear wall, or a position of a window or a door being in the wrong location, because they're doing, you can see, physically modeling right off of my 3D model. And so it just by itself just coordinates. You just don't run into those issues. Except occasionally when I have a hood vent that backs up to a double-sided strong ball, and then call Jesse in the field and say, hey Jesse, I need a 10-inch square hole in that shear wall all the way through. And this guy actually, while I was on the site, before I left site, we had an SK in the field ready to go to the inspector with the fix for that, which was, if you're interested, required 2 1/4-inch steel plates on either side of the wall with, how many screws? There's like 30 screws each side, but still, overall, a fairly simple fix for the contractor in the field, especially this contractor in particular as a robotic plasma cutter. So he can get the plates out to the site hour if he needs.
Yeah, we send a DXF out.
Yeah, they actually send him a DXF for the plate, and they load the DXF into the plasma cutter. Yeah, exact. Yeah, with that contractor, I've done some pretty cool stuff on decorative knife. Well, actually, there were structural knife plates. If you guys designed that, I guess. Yeah, you did. It's your 7 says.
Give me an 8. I like real lockers. Is that nah?
No, this is out in Horace Camp. This is, I think, before you were there. Yeah. 2000. You remember that? Van Bar.
Like,
Yeah. And so we had this, actually there's an old SketchUp video from when I did first videos. It's an octagonal room with roof framings, all 12 by 12s that come to Symbol Point. And so the center ready steel ring is a series of these giant knife plates that are partially exposed on the underside into each one of those 12 light spots. And Mike got the DXF pile, they fabricated it, and I think they had it out on site. It was 3 days later. It was massive. It was like probably 5-foot diameter plates and just fit right in place. It's
They got away with not for a certified welder.
yeah, or a certified welder. Yeah, which they had on staff.
I think you that the model that you were showing that's another
No, I usually try to get them involved at the end of schematic design when we have an HOA's approval of the basic massing of the building. The client has accepted the floor plan and the layout and the general look of the home. And then I will get them started because a lot of homes, sometimes I'm making assumptions on beam sizes and ceiling joists, for instance. I typically will set them for 14-inch LVLs. And in this one, I think we had to bump them up to 16s because of the span. And so those are then adjustments I will make in my model to match, which is nice because I'll have their model and I just, push and pull it up, clean it up against where it hits a wall or on the eaves, any place where it might have, if you do that, you can imagine that affects your overhang dimension because it's now a little deeper. The overhang gets pushed out, so I have to adjust that back to get it to the overhang that I want to have. So there's always a little bit of work involved, but not much. I'm doing another presentation at 4 for anyone that's interested in seeing more how I design and set out my end of the drawings that I would take that being more time that these guys go on the structural aspect.
Cool. So as Nick kind of mentioned, we will get a model from Nick. And from here, it's really setting it up that it'll talk to our system. So in this case, we know that it takes a minute to figure out how you want to set up a plane set. So you kind of have to see the architectural, go, okay, here I've got 1 floor, 2 floors, and a base floor. So this is probably, in my mind, going to be a 3-level plan set. So I know that that's what I'm going to start with. It's going to be slab at the bottom. We have the garage. So in my head, I'm going, okay, we've got a 3-story slab floor. That's the plan set we're going to order with. And we start there because everything we do from the beginning where we're running our scripts, which I'll show you in a second, they relate to the components we bring in to model, which we model directly in his model. So there are no coordination issues there from the beginning. And then all of that will talk on a 3-story slab to the template that relates to that same stuff that we ran the script on and the components we brought into model with. And by doing that, we've made it very, very quick to go from his model to, I could a day later have a rough note-taking and like wall outlines, and we can have a discussion very, very quickly before we even think about design, about what it looks like. That also allows us to match his plan set exactly. So when you're turning sets or turning your sheets in the actual set, the corner right here is going to be at the exact same point on the page. So if you're trying to stack and look, or contractors looking at the paper, your eyes don't move, which is better because they're not jumping, you're not going to miss things.
Yeah, one thing that's really important is Nick sends us his walls of 5.5 inches fit. So 2x stuff fits right in there. So we can align things perfectly. We don't have to deal with sheetrock and siding and other things.
We do, a lot of architecture firms we work with are about Nick, don't always do that, and so you have to do some workarounds sometimes. It's in coordination before you even get to start modeling. Where's your stuff, guys? I need to know where to put. I can do it for the whole house, but I need to know. With Nick's, it's so clean, I can get this and start modeling. And I think I had Schlavsky, our first meeting was like 2 days after you first sent us the model.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here we go, let's get moving. Which is pretty cool on a house this size.
Yeah. How many architects are in here? Do you show finishes on your plans? Or sheathing? Good. That's the right answer. So there are a lot of architects that want to show everything. They want to show too much. And it's hard to get it across, but if you have a contractor in the same room, ask the contractor if they care in the construction documents if they're showing the drywall, and they say, no, I just want to know where the stud's up. I want the outside face of stud, the foundation edge, that's what we build to. Everything else, it gets added on to that. So there is absolutely no reason to be showing all of that at the level of detail for a 1/4-inch plan, which is what these models generate. Now, when I do my details, and these guys as well, I mean, they won't necessarily show finish. That's when you add all the extra material on those things. That keeps the models very light, fast, and easy to document for construction documents, because everybody wants face of stud dimensions.
Sorry, you know when people line sheeting on the outside? Huh? You know when people line sheeting on the outside, it's 6 inches instead of 5? No. I get respect on that with the from contractors, from fryers.
Strange, that's where they come in because they have everything but 3/8 or half the inch.
Yeah, and so it's going to vary. Like, we don't almost have the same shear on every thimble be off. So the foundation is always laid FMS. Typically, the foundation goes on first, the most important, and generally the foundation's the case that's stud. So everything else, the shear I push back on you, or can you figure out? It's going to be this, and it's going to get nailed into that.
And I totally agree. I work with a bunch of people who are used to doing the same thing over and whatever.
Yeah.
Where's the grid line? Where's the grid? They want the grid, so they want their sheet able line of the foundation. We'd have that for a year. Because they're rainbow near year.
Yeah. See, that begins to create so many problems with water intrusion.
I agree. The glass is sandy.
Yeah.
Huh. I get that push right.
Tell them they're doing it wrong.
No, here's this photo.
Yeah, no, I've seen plans like that too, where they put it so, and what a nightmare for the contractor. All your layout, your pressure treated silt plate has to be as 1/2 inch or 3/8 or 3/4 or an inch in make, or.
How's the concrete guy? How's the surveyor going to shoot it?
Yeah,
How's the con?
it'd be a nightmare. So, sorry.
No, hey, jump in anytime, rant over. Okay, we're just going to focus kind of the stuff that I just talked about. So this is a Nick's blank model, right? And so the first thing I'm going to do in here is I'm going to remove all the stuff that doesn't really help us. So all his scenes help him a lot. They don't help us at all. We have his PDFs, we have his layout documents. So having them in the model is not that important, as we're going to make it our structural model like his architectural model. So we're just going to go ahead and delete on the scenes, right? And we just talked about, we've got that 3-story with a slab full. Okay. So our internal extensions, we have these set up for all our various options. 2-story slab, frame, 3-story, 4-story, and all our fun stuff. But we got 3-story with a slab and granite. So what's going to happen here is, actually, although before I do that, I'm going to go to this.
Keep my little spurts suggest you.
4-hour process. It started, I wrote the first one about 12 years ago, and it's developed a long way since that. It can do an awful lot. And so what it's actually doing here is we are generating all of the tags that we need to match all of our templates. All those tags are getting put on the correct scenes, auto off. Right? We stack our viewports with our raster at the bottom, and then multiple vectors on top. So we would have like our framing down below, which we would fade out with fog. And then you have on a framing page, you have your beams, and then you have a column on top of that, so you can see the columns above the beams. If you put the column layer below, you can't tell what's where. We use a coloring system to tell on the plan whether the column is above or below. So it's setting all that up. It's deleting any extraneous guides. It's setting up our custom styles for various scenes. And it's setting to a parallel projection top view and adding fog to all the framing layers. I'm sure it's doing a couple of things I forgot, but that's the general sense here. Let's watch it run. Yesterday it ran okay. Let's see, no goes. All that top. It eliminates about 4 hours at least per project. So we see it drop all the tags there. It's working on the scenes. Good as heck. And good to go. So if we go ahead and expand all these, we've seen what is added.
Also now we do add all of our potential steel shop layers into every project also, as I've created templates for that as well. So every project has those in case we end up doing steel at the end. But that's everything that thing just generated. Even on this slow computer with a bunch of stuff going on, that was pretty darn quick, right? Here's the scenes. And the scenes. And all of our scenes is here. Now I had to put this architectural yet. So it hides all of our structural stuff. Oh, now it's gonna forget. Okay, give it a sec. Just don't push any buttons. Don't push any buttons. It's gotta be hard to say if we should. I don't think I changed it out there. Alright, we'll still hear stuff. Okay, so from there, essentially the same thing. We've already got all these scenes set up. They're the same between the two models, obviously, because I just ran to show it. But what we're going to do is go to our internal component library, right? And we're going to look at our modeling, right? So our basic modeling. I know in this project in that area, we're going to use a Doug fir number. Okay, that's important, and I'll show you where it comes in. We're going to go to the 3-story slab again. Who read 3-story slab script? We're going to grab the 3-story slab and pause. I don't know how to frame full or going. 3-story slab. Oh, now this one's going to freak out too. Here it is. Oh, so it's on the layers turn off here, but I'm just going to click it. We'll turn on the layers on. Text. You wait on that one and on. There we go. Okay, so you can see what we just dropped in here. All this stuff. And I'll be move it out of the way. I know when when you bring things in from the component library, even if it's a bunch of components, it comes in as a component. We don't want that, but it's a great way to quickly drag things that you want in. So the first thing I'm going to do here is just explode the thing. That is not a component, I don't have to deal with it, and everything's already set. And what we'll see is if we look at entity info, all this stuff is just that we can grab to model, directly index model with, but it's already layered correctly, right? This is all where it should be. Walls, beams, grids, foundation, takes out all that step of if you just brought some random component into your model and then, oh, I gotta go add it to a layer. Again, we're talking seconds, 10, 15, 20 seconds, but if you're doing that for 100 components, now that's a very, very quick run, right? So what we'll do here is the first thing I like to do is I make sure I'm verifying top of plywood. For plywood, usually the first thing I drop in at the floor levels is that I don't have to remodel the walls and I can step my wall right to that plywood. And those of you that's a call with Nick, hey, are you sure? Yeah, hey, let's go.
And that is the one exception to a rule. I do show the floor plot because that becomes the basic subfloor, and that's a kind of a critical dimension you get in the contract. And a lot of times I like to go with the 1.8".
Yeah. Now we know that with Nick, we get push back a lot of other places, but with Nick, we don't even ask him anymore. We just go with 1.8", then a deal.
It's just a better floor.
Yep, better floor. Good for hydronics. Okay, so the magic part, we just go through when we model this thing. I think we saw that video at the very beginning. I'll just let it run here. Oh, no. Sorry, I met you back. Oh, I don't get that. That's all right. We kind of saw it running, but we will actually go through this thing. Come in, drop it in, model, adjust, make unique, move on. That gives us control. Our base model, before we do any design, we don't use a lot of extensions. We find we want a little bit more control over what we're doing, and we haven't found the best way yet to use a lot of extensions to speed this up any more. That goes with our process. For instance, this model, I built the pre-designed SketchUp model for structural in about 8 hours, which didn't have any design member sizes, just had base sizes. We know for a truckee, we just always start with 6x12 Doug fir beams. That's just how we do it. We need to put PSLs on the floor to match the depth. That's just how we mount it. And once it goes to an engineer, after your pre-designed model is done, that's where we start adding little sizes. And on that respect, again, with the component library, if we have steel, it's all internal. We don't have to hunt the 3D warehouse. So if I know I need a W12 by, I can grab a W12 by 1/6, nice size beam there. right? I have everything I need to go ahead and model. What we'll notice here is these are also on the layers that are going to talk to my steel shop layers that are already been built in with that spurt. That saves me another step in it, right?
The reason we do steel shops, put them into our plan set is our review time is obviously 0 if somebody else is doing it. And this review time is also exactly the same for 0, as none of it's a surprise. So if we get it, if you sub those out, the cost is nearly the same as must be, but the review time doubles the price because we charge to review it. So is Nick. It's very expensive if somebody else does it. So we just had the pre-designed model. Once that pre-designed model is built or kind of in the process of, we will go ahead and we will create our plan set and get it started. So if we're making notes or we have a thought or we get talk to Nick, we know we need to do something over here. We have a placeholder for those spots, not just the sticky note on your desk. So remember, we were at a 3-story slab structure. That's the script we were in. That's the components we brought in. Now we're going to come into our templates and layout, which my templates, there you go. And I know Mick only uses 24 by 36 sheets. That's actually wonderful. A lot of other firms do a bunch of random sizes and you have to just make do. But 24 by 36 is great. So we're gonna come down, we're gonna find our templates.
Maybe the light was 24 by 36. 30 by 42 don't fit comfortably in a tailgated car.
I didn't know it was, and then you get the fun 36 by 48s there. I see a lot. You can't without sheet of plywood. Take carrying him around. Doing dentist, you get your workout in, right? Okay, so we're gonna open our 3-story slab structure on a 24 by 36. Now what we'll see here is that we have all of our layers set up. All of these pages all have scenes. They're all ready to go. And as soon as I click relink, which I'm not going to do on that because that's better freak out on this laptop, our model is going to be here. And then all I have to do is mash spark grids, which we put in the model. Nick doesn't. We do put them in the model. And we just grabbed his grids from his layout sheet, paste them to our plan, turn our grids on, and match the point on the page. And then there we have a starting point for our run sets. The reason we put our grids into the model is so that in the field, when they want to see, go from 2D to 3D, they can scan a QR code. In the future, it's going to be a link to a website or to an app where you can actually play around with the 3D model. And so you can really quickly go to a spot where you want to be if you have your grids. I got it with Trubity days. Who used Scootery? 1. Awesome. Okay, well, back to the Kudo. You used to be able to open up on a mobile device, and you could see these, and it was relatively helpful when you could have used that out. Real last thing we'll have a touch on in the model here before we kind of move more to the plan stuff is if you're having issues, find ways to solve them quickly rather than just repeating the same thing over and over. Our drafter kind of brought that to our attention. That's a really good point. Why are we just doing this all by hand and turning layers on and off and running all this stuff? So what we did is we wrote scripts that you saw me doing that while Nick was talking. Now I've noticed what's going, how is he doing that? Well, I'm turning, all this stuff off as I'm going. And those are all just custom scripts to turn out custom layers on and off. Okay, not a big deal, you think? One cool thing is, when you move a face in a component, if you go turn a layer on and off, you're no longer moving that face, you have to start from scratch, right? High-res model works still, right? But if you go turn something on and off and you're in some complicated little area, it doesn't work. Well, we can come in here, redo this with scripts. I can do all kinds of stuff. I want to ARP on, so I know how to move. Again, we're saving not a lot of time, but 2 seconds, 3 seconds every time you do that. And if you think of how long it takes to model some of these big structures, that's several hundred times a day doing that. It ends up being a lot of time. And whether you're doing it or a drafter's doing it or someone else, it's substantial amount of time just to turn that one off. So if you're, my little suggestion there is you can find me in the forums. You can email me. I can punch in the right direction. But if you have little things like that, this is really pedantic, this is tedious. How do we not do that? There are ways to do it. Let's move on because I'm going down a road. Okay, building the structure. I did that in the second session yesterday. I just gushed. Okay. So we've got is building a structural plan with the ZE layout templates, right? So let's hop back into lab real quick. Let me open up the file for this project. Scrapbooks are very important. For us, when we're doing a plan set, a lot of the callouts are built in so that you don't have much to do. Let's see. It's just a little bit. No, when we brought those components in, all of our data comes from the model. So our component instance, this is labeled as what this member is. This is a 5.5 inch by 12 inch go there. That's 1.35, that's just our calc number for our reference and for each jurisdiction's reference on the Mancheki side. And so what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna use native SketchUp tools to label this stuff, right? What that allows is when I first started years and years ago before we developed this stuff, it was all done by hand. So your drafter or your designer would look at a calculation set and pick out that location of where it was in the model, find the calc number, and then look at the calc, go, okay, that's a blue lamp. And then you come in and you go text box and you type that in, you click the calc number, which is fine. It's just another way to do it. Takes a little bit longer. But what happens when the model changes and the count changes? The designer then has to go tell the drafter, okay, we changed this to a 6x14 instead. And he goes, okay, I gotta go back to the page, I gotta find it, text it in, and then deal with it that way. But now we have something that is linked. So when you update the component instance column in SketchUp, this also updates. It's one less step, one less space for information to be lost, all right? Let's look at scrapbooks. So if we're looking at, detail callouts or something, that's all pre-built. Just for instance, drop those in. I can pull this out later. Or if I'm on a share page and I know I need to strap that. Right, we could see how very quickly we can start to build out concept. Just as we go, right? The cool ones that we've just kind of developed, I kind of blew Nick's mind hair on this when I set it in the first place. I'm not going to say I totally through it, but we're starting to do stem elevations. And cool little thing in 24 is when you're grabbing leader text from scrapbooks. If you can get that leader to align to what you're doing in the model, it will auto-generate the text. You could drop it there you used to, but then you have to go back and click and select it and it would do it. But for instance, now, when we do this, that's grabbing real information from the model. The cool part about those is we had it built in, and again, this is a custom sub. Oh boy, sorry. Let's open SketchUp for all. Perfect. Do that all the time. Okay, we look at dynamic components. Who uses dynamic components or has used? A few. We use them for shear walls, which helps us with lengths, heights, aspect ratios. We use that to label our plan also, those dynamic components. But what we've done here is we've actually built this in, so when I update this, watch our top is down here, it updates to where that elevation actually is. Now, if we step back, what that means is for my out, if I've then labeled this plan already and I need to adjust this elevation, all I have to do is update it in the model and update the guide reference, and the elevation on the plan set will go with it. Again, one less place for information being lost. Okay, moving on. Those are the big ones I wanted to cover there.
I'm gonna come back to the Excel thing if we have time. Who's using Excel to talk to layout right now? Anyone? A little? Okay. I'll come back to that. I hope we have time. Moving on. We want to look at the detail sheets. I'm going to jump in and look at our detail library. You had a couple in our library session yesterday. Just a couple that I see here. But what we've done is we've generated a internal component of the detail library where all of our details are housed. One of our biggest problems was being able to find details we've already drawn. How do we limit layout size? How do we make layout better? So it's fewer models and an easier way to flag in. So what we ended up doing, here's our detail library, right? So as we start to build a detail set that corresponds to this plan set, we're just gonna pick a detail. So let's just say I need a floor-to-floor shear transfer detail, right? Let's say hydronics on this job. Need hydronics on this job? No hydronics. So traditional flooring, we use TJIs, and I need an exterior detail. So kind of standard here. We have some fun ones with the deck. So let's just say it's a parallel TJI with a wall above and below at a depth. Cool. Okay. This is all 8.5 by 11 flat. There's nothing here. All right. So I know that let's just say I need that detail. I could redraw it. I could use Window Explorer to try to find it, which I don't recommend. But that's possible. Instead, what we did is we built this. I know the page I was going to. I copied that. I didn't open the detail sheet. Let's do that real fast. And I have my first detail. Now I know I need the same thing, perpendicular version, but it was very, very fast to find that detail. Right? Who does detailing for any projects? You want to deal with detailing for layout, all that kind of stuff. Windows Explorer to find multiple details? Yeah, it's a pain. So we do this, and there are fast ways to edit some of these details if you may have a custom situation. We don't have enough time for me to kind of run through that, but we did record sessions from yesterday, so those will go up online on our website. So if you're interested in more of that detailing stuff, do log on and see those, because it is some really cool stuff. Oh yeah, didn't mention, we've got in the company version of that library now, over 6,000 details in that document. It's a 2,000 page document. Right, and operates totally fine. Right, it can open up on any computer in our network. It'll open those files, yeah.
Just question where you are right now. You pull those details from that strap.
They're built as layout templates. They're not housed in a scrapbook. We'll call them scrapbooks, but they are not built in as a quote layout scrapbook. So if I come into scrapbooks, I don't have those loaded in here. I can't find them this way because with that many files, our library is built into 180 different layout scrapbooks, right? And that means every time I go click this, it's gonna try to load all of those internally so it can find them, which is fine, but I really don't like sitting there waiting for the thing to load. It takes a lot of time to do that. It's just not super fast, so that's why we developed it that way.
Okay, not that like last screen that you were on that you're finding.
It's just a PDF.
Oh, it's PDF.
This is just a PDF. We're using Bluebeam. This is what we use for all our PDF stuff. And this is just a PDF with hyperlinks. And it's a lot of setting it up so that it knows where it's going.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a straight PDF.
Is it how did it find the PDF?
Right here. Oh. There's a hidden hyperlink.
Oh, okay.
Right here. Gotcha. And so when I click that, I just have to remember what page I was looking at. I can't tell the hyperlink which page to open layout to, but I can tell it which document to open. So what we're doing is I know I need pair wall above, below depth. I just remember that. If you don't, just switch back to that screen. Normally I don't do this on one screen, I do this on 3 screens, so it's a little bit perfect. But when I get there, usually by the time I get to layout, it's open.
See, I don't know which track hyperlink is opening a layout file. So it's one track.
Or those that don't realize templates, scrapbooks, they are all just layout files. You can store them as templates and store them as a scrapbook if you like, but they're all still just a layout file.
So, and then there's that detail we need. We can close this out and move on. Do check out that detail video when we get it up, because we went pretty hardcore on that yesterday. Coordinating the structural model with the architectural. Nick touched on this pretty bit at the very beginning. It's hard for stuff to get lost or stuff to be forgotten in a plan set because we build it straight into his model. I will send him the model, he will drop it into his current model, spin around, see if anything's protruding and whatnot. If he doesn't see any problems, we're done. That's the entire Herb Nation.
He would bind all the holes he lost from my bends.
Yeah. Yeah, then one of the last things I do when they finish their model is I do one more round. It's usually the last thing that establishes all of the foundation for the sizes. And so I'll then update my model to make sure it's matching the same for you. Not that I dimension them, but I like my section cuts to make sense. So if there's a giant retaining wall footing, I want my section cut to reflect it and match what they show. Because you know both you and the keys up at doing a post up that could get missed in your usual was that now?
Oh, it's the engineer's fault.
So we're dealing with architects. I mean, we're dealing with homes that are very custom, very complex, and there's always one or two little things that just
Wait, we have an interior designer on the job.
So they're not here. But it happens on every project. There's stuff. Just those saws there, get out of it.
The reality is there is no such thing as a perfect set of drawings. There never will be. And occasionally little things like that slip. Thankfully, that was a pretty minor item, easy to fix.
If we delete all the ovens and furniture, we try probably hammer out as best we can. Usually cabinets. With Nick, it's not that big a deal. Some of the other firms don't layer quite as well, and so you'll delete something and then go, where the heck's the floor cavity?
Yeah.
Why was that on cabinets? I don't get it. So then you have to go back and find it and redo what you're doing, and eventually you just say, okay, forget it. We're just going to leave the geometry and deal with the near file. Rather than trying to clean up other files.
But yes, technically that would have been my responsibility to say, hey, this is a problem going to be here.
When you go with a different firm and say to hang your AutoCAD file, you just kind of import it and then just draw your own sketch.
We no matter what we get, we're gonna build it. The only time we can't build it in it, obviously, but any 3D model we'll import. We still build directly in their model, and then so that way when they send us a revised model later, we can just drop that into the same point we have, and then go from there. The only thing we don't do, and that's why we have the script version as opposed to the way Nick does it, where he always starts his models in a template file, which has everything set up. We don't do it that way because we're not always working with Nick, who's 24 by 36 and set up totally good. We're working with a lot of different formats, a lot of different firms. So if we've got an ArchiCAD file, per se, that we need to import, right? SketchUp, it's a lot better now in the newer versions, but over the last decade, if you try to copy an ArchiCAD file into a SketchUp file, right, into your template file. So import it to SketchUp, copy it, paste it into your template file. It could sit there and spin for 10 or 15 minutes while it's trying to copy, right? If you have to do that for the second time after everything's already set up, there's nothing you can do. But I don't want to sit there when I could be drafting structure or have our drafter just sit there going and waiting while it's just trying to copy, where we can just see how fast that script is. Right? Even on an old computer, on the computers we run in the office, it's a matter of seconds. 2 or 3 seconds tops, and you're drafting, right? I hope I answered your question. Rat wolf. Anyway, so you forgot. So once we have all this done, Nick's review, plan sets are out, Kermit's in. How do we coordinate with the field? Dave, you want to help out on this?
Sure. This is one of my favorites. We used to coordinate with Kubity, and it was great. They went under, it is a bad business plan. But now we need to have something out there that relays the 2D into 3D. So, and that's mostly because the labor that's coming up and being hired didn't come up through the trades anymore. They're just not coming up through as a framer and then seeing 2D and building 3D. And so they just can't see it. So on the cover page, we try to show each assembly of each. No, I don't know. Well, let's just be your fun. But okay, let's get there. So like for instance, this view here shows the steel and the foundation, and we do that so the contractor immediately sees the structure and says, "Whoa, there's going to be a big steel price in this thing," and so his cost per foot immediately goes up, and so there's no surprises there on the way. We remove roofs and floors so they can see all the beams. This is an interactive 3D model here that we can change and do different viewports. That's our only model that goes to the field now, that they can be moved around because we lost the connection, which SketchUp is now providing for us. I think in 2025 we'll have a link that we can put on the plan for they can scan it to the phone or go to a website, still have the 3D models. It's essential that we have these 3D models in the deal. Great. So those, that's the reason for this cover page and all the different views, is just to hopefully relay the, if they're working on a certain portion of the structure, they can actually see what the 2D plan is showing. And then as we talked about our steel shops, building those into the model, if we know we're getting the steel shops up front, the contractors decided they want to use us, we build them. That's why we're asking for really accurate floor elevations, because when we set that top apply, everything works down from there. And then we set the finished floor of the garage, everything works up from there. And so we can actually build these right into the modeler. And then Jesse's, I'll let him describe how he shows them, even every hold down shown in the steel shops. So we have, I think we're putting a hold downs in the model when we show those, right?
We put hold downs in the model at the foundation level is now standard practice. Not necessarily upper levels unless it's hitting steel. If it's hitting steel, we'll put it on.
Yeah, so we know exactly where that threaded rod goes. It gets welded on. So when these steels come out to the site, they should be really accurate. And we found that to be the case.
Yeah, one is in Colorado, at Winter Current last April. Oh yeah, right around there. And they're roughing in right now. We did the steel shops on that, and that's a 7,500 square foot home. It's less than a year, and they'll be done on that build, which is pretty darn cool. So the steel is really just looking at tolerances, how these guys are going to fabricate it. A lot of it comes down to the setup. At the very beginning, that pre-base or pre-designed law is what's setting our steel. If we do that right, and we start putting members in, then it just becomes detailing. We can put our drafter on this and say, here's the structural set, here's the model, make the model match the details we've designed. And that can all be written here. And then we can generate these steel shop drawings that are down to, for members, down to the 16th of an inch for plates, down to either the 32nd or the 64th of an inch. All right, plates you can do that with because they're just getting CNC'd anyway, so they're super accurate. You don't really do that with members, but that's how we do this. So we look at, all these beams. Here we go, we've got hold down stuff. These are all in the red locations. Obviously, contractors need to review these and make sure it's how you want to build, but this is a great way to do it. We try to get the steel because it does make projects run very smooth, and we like that. We prefer not getting pulse revealed. And same thing as when Nick gets that model. So he can check our steel and those shop drawings simply by grabbing our model, pasting it back into his, and making sure he's not seeing something he doesn't want to see. And his coordination is essentially done. Minimal time.
Versus book your all the coordination you.
Well, yeah, I remember it's somebody's just impossible to see. You know, you're looking at 2D engineer playing it to you. Wow, it can be really time consuming. So I know apparently also pays that.
And just dull. A couple quick extras. I'm gonna open it up for some Q&A. So we're running a little bit short on time, and I don't want Tyson to throw something at me. So better a real bar. Some of the plugins we use, people always ask, what do we use for plugins? I want to say the biggest one we use the most often is TomTom's 3D text editor. The ability to edit the 3D text you add to the model is a very simple little extension, and I use it 100 times in every model we're drawing. Enter-off view memory, if you go and you check out the detail and stuff and we get that out, that is key for efficient detailing. Auto invisible layer, anyone who's auto invisible? No? So we know that we had a bunch of scenes set up, and then we add a layer. That layer gets added to all of those scenes, whether you want it or not. Auto invisible layer lets you choose, so you don't have to update a bunch of scenes after the fact. Medic truss, we use a lot in Hawaii or areas we do trusses, just because I can draw a complex truss roof in a matter of seconds, and I really don't like doing that by hand, and they're very close. Medic project, I only use because he took the extend and cut tool out of Medic truss and added it to Medic project, so that's the only reason we use that one. PDF importer by John Brock. That's a great little tool if you've got people that are only doing drawings in PDF form or AutoCAD form, but old school and can't find the AutoCAD file, which get the vectorized line work. You can pull that into SketchUp with that import, including all of the annotations of text, not just the line work. Really cool little PDF one. You can see him wandering the halls. He has his laptop. As per demonstration, it's really cool. Dale's profile builder, we're using 3 right now. We're using that for steel shops, primarily to draw nailers and studs on top of the beams or any holes, just because it's very easy to go fast and at the equidistant for everything with that. Takes a little bit to get used to the interface, but once you get going, it's very, very powerful. And then SimLab Exporter is how we generate the 3D PDFs, which we can do as those ones we saw here on the cover page. We also do them as a full page, like 24 by 36s or bigger if contractor wants them. We do those for all our steam shops. So when they're reviewing steel, they can look three-dimensional. They see what they're looking at.
Film or just by
It's got everything. It honestly depends on your PDF viewer. So again, if you're using a not so good one, you're limited on what you do. If you're using a really good one, we just noticed that on this is an old blue beam that's out of date. It doesn't have the same controls and has our nice blue beams at the office. So it really comes down to the user on that. Questions? Yeah.
When you put in your dynamic components, let's say it's a 2x6 wall, you plot it onto your floor plan, and what is your mandate for, say, extending that?
So the walls are not dynamic components. It's a group of the components, like the walls. So it's actually interesting. When I first started, it was all about push-pull, right? And I very rarely use push-pull anymore. So if I know I'm going to go here, I'm just going to move this over. Obviously, I'm doing a lot of keystrokes here, so I'm making it unique, right? I'm using a left or right box to generate, or to grab that face, and I even move to the overhead and lock in the axes with the arrows. I don't come over. You'll see that in the complicated areas. If you're trying to zoom in, you get to a specific face, it's kind of funky. When you use high raster model, it's a little bit better, but then I gotta come in, I gotta do this, click all the way in, try and make sure you're grabbing the right face, and like did this one, did I accidentally grab the top face? I could just select what I want, left or right box, move, lock in the axis, and I'm good to go. That's kind of that kind of stuff. We would love
something that already this that we just haven't found. Well, there's a couple. It just doesn't work very good with our system yet. Like Medista Wall and Brock's Framer. Like there's some ones out there. But sitting around and testing all these and making all what you want is a lot of effort. And yeah, for production, we're not really. Let's just have fun in SketchUp. So eventually we'll find something that works, but we can do these very, very quickly. When you're dealing with rate walls, that gets a little bit more complicated with a lot of those extensions. And at that point, I mean, why are you using an extension and power vert? Like, yeah, flat wall is really easy in a lot of these extensions. Rate wall is not so much. That's weird, very typical and hard to model with those extensions, where I can do it very, very fast, man. Great. Answer the question.
All right, we'll take. Yeah. Would you not use Profile Builder?
Yeah, could. You could set up and do it. Again, we just started really touching Profile Builder. And again, that's one of those ones that if we can build it in and make it work right, yeah. Again, a lot of testing. You don't want to just implement it and then go, oh crap, we really shouldn't have done that. But yeah, no, that's another different.
Has to be this one. Apply a new sample those.
Just gonna say, I just like for this point, get your class on it. You can give it a lot of stuff with creating kind of the coding behind it to get.
Yeah, because of a lot of really cool stuff. The walls, especially, you could save some time there. But the way we do beams and columns, you could save a little bit of time, but then our layering gets a little bit weird, and how it comes in, whether it's on the steel layer, or the wood layer, or a no-show layer. So that's where the testing comes in, and it's just it's on the list. Just haven't quite got to it yet. We're about to run a little bit over, but do come find us. We're happy to keep talking, answering questions. The last thing we got for you, any links you want to snap a picture of us, you can visit our website. We do have our detail library for sale. If that's something, when you watch the video, you think you like, take a look. It's a lot of cool stuff on there, full previews. And then we also have our interest form for our plan bonding process. We just kind of briefly touched about here, talked about a lot yesterday. That video will be up also. And it's just an interest form. Send us, if you're interested, give us your contact information. And if we get enough interest on those, we'll start producing that so you guys can use it. The public can use it.
Nate, as an office architect, is there a value to you having all those decals, basically?
Not to me personally, because I don't do structural details. But that said, I do refer to their details. If I had something particular of detailing and want to see how that impacts the structure, I do look at their details a lot. If I'm going to develop one up, I might call Jesse. I haven't had to yet and say, hey, can you send me this detail? But I wouldn't have before with structure.
And I'll add on to that. It's depends on where you are, because we have. I have talked to people that really want those because they don't need structurals. They don't need structurals. They're doing structural as the architect. And at that point, if they want to provide those details, then yeah, it could be really good. Like, that's what they, yeah, that's the 3 hour range.
I have an own choice. There are cars from licensed structural engineers or so.
If you guys got nothing else, do come find out here. How much you selling the library for? I think it's $14.95. 2,000 to this stuff. The one we have up there right now is about 2,000 details. 90 cents a detail. So 1,400. Yeah, but yeah. Cool. Yeah. But again, if you could start getting the interest, we'll produce and start getting the company version out for the public also. Again, we just need the interest because it's not easy to generate. I can't just go, well, it's Friday night at 4, let's get this done by 6. It's going to take me weeks to generate that for it to be used on other people's computers and not just in our internal network. But we do appreciate you hanging out. Hope you get a little bit out of it. Thank you a lot. Take care, enjoy your